Let's be honest, talking about evil feels uncomfortable. We'd rather label someone as toxic, problematic, or just difficult. It feels more polite, less extreme, but sometimes language needs to match the weight of reality. And the truth is, some people are not just mean or damaged or complicated. Some people are dangerous. They don't want connection. They want control. They don't seek healing. They seek harm, and the most dangerous part. They often wear masks that look just like kindness, empathy, or charm. This conversation today is not about judging others, it's about protecting ourselves. It's about developing the emotional courage to call evil what it is, even when it shows up in a nice suit, smiles sweetly, and tells you it's just trying to help. They derive pleasure from your pain. Here's the hard truth we don't like to admit. Some people enjoy your suffering. And I don't mean that lightly. I'm not talking about people who are emotionally immature or just bad at being there for others. I'm talking about people who feel a sick kind of satisfaction when you're hurting. It makes them feel powerful, in control, superior, and they won't always hurt you in obvious ways. No, evil people are subtle. They play the long game. They'll cut you with compliments, offer feedback that feels more like a gut punch. They'll smile while they shame you, laugh while they undermine you, and when you finally break down, they show up with concern on their face, but you feel worse, not better, after the conversation. That's not care. That's cruelty wearing a mask. Evil people often appear helpful. They bring you soup when you're sick. They offer a shoulder when you're crying. But look closer, it's not about compassion. It's about access. The more vulnerable you are, the more they can invade. They want to be in the room when your walls fall down, not to protect you, but to know where to strike next. Here's how you know you're in the presence of someone truly harmful. They are magnetically drawn to your weakness, and they seem to come alive when you're falling apart. Your sadness energizes them. Your mistakes give them leverage. Your vulnerability, which should be sacred, becomes their favorite weapon. And when you start to notice it, when your gut says, "This person enjoys my pain," they'll gaslight you. "You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. I was just trying to help." But your nervous system never lies. If you feel smaller, heavier, or less safe after time with someone, believe that. This isn't about making people villains. It's about recognizing that some people already are, and they just don't want you to know it. Not until they've drained everything good out of you. So here's your permission. You don't have to stay in the presence of someone who feeds off your pain. You don't have to call it toxic. You can call it what it really is: evil, and most importantly, you can walk away. They manipulate through kindness. One of the most dangerous forms of evil doesn't look threatening at all. It doesn't scream, it doesn't hit, it smiles, and that's what makes it so hard to recognize, because the manipulation is wrapped in what looks like kindness. These people don't force control. They disguise it as generosity. They say, "I'm just looking out for you." But what they're really doing is weaving a net: one subtle favor, one well-placed gift, one overly generous gesture at a time, until you're entangled in obligation, guilt, and quiet fear. This kind of evil doesn't rely on brute force, it relies on emotional debt. You begin to feel like you owe them, not just your time, but your silence, your loyalty, your freedom. And when you start to question their behavior, when you get that gut feeling that something's off, they'll point to all the good things they've done for you. "After everything I've done, this is how you treat me." Sound familiar? What they're doing is using kindness as currency, but it's not a gift, it's an investment, one that demands control in return. True kindness doesn't come with a receipt. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't create a power imbalance where one person always feels indebted and the other always feels owed. Evil people are master manipulators. They study you. They learn what you need most: comfort, approval, love, security, and then they become the only source of it in your life. And once they've positioned themselves as irreplaceable, they weaponize it. They decide when to give, when to withhold, and when to use your gratitude as a leash. That's not love. That's control through illusion. So if you find yourself constantly thanking someone who also makes you feel small, if you feel like you can't leave because of how good they've been to you, if you start questioning your boundaries because they've been so helpful, you are not in a safe relationship. You are being slowly dominated through a script that looks like kindness but is rooted in cruelty, and that is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to name it. Because once you see it clearly, you reclaim the most powerful truth. Kindness without safety is manipulation, and you deserve both. They never accept accountability. One of the most exhausting patterns you'll ever experience is trying to hold an evil person accountable because you never win. Not because you're wrong, but because they don't play fair. They don't argue to understand, they argue to escape. Here's how it goes. You bring up something they did that hurt you, something concrete, something real. Instead of owning it, they pivot. Suddenly you're the problem. You're too sensitive. You misunderstood their intentions. You always start drama. They lie, they twist, they gaslight. And if you keep pressing for truth, they shut down or explode, and then you're left apologizing for how they reacted to your pain. This isn't immaturity. It's not defensiveness. It's strategic denial. Evil people do not accept accountability because accountability would threaten their ability to control the narrative, and control is their currency. They rewrite stories to protect their image, even if it means erasing your truth entirely. You'll notice it in the patterns. They remember events differently. They forget conversations that inconvenience them. They twist facts to make themselves the victim even when you have the emotional bruises to prove otherwise. And if they can't deny the facts, they'll discredit you. Suddenly your memory can't be trusted. Your emotions aren't stable. Your reactions are too much. Before long, you begin to feel crazy even though your heart knows what it lived through. And that's the goal, not just to avoid blame, but to break your belief in your own experience. Evil people don't just avoid responsibility, they transfer it. They hand it to you like a gift-wrapped bomb. And if you don't take it, they explode. The truth is, accountability is the foundation of healthy relationships. If someone can't say, "I'm sorry, I hurt you, I'll do better," and not once, but consistently and sincerely, you're not dealing with someone who's just flawed. You're dealing with someone who's dangerous. So don't confuse charm with character. Don't confuse intelligence with integrity. If someone is always right, always innocent, always the victim, and you're always the one apologizing, over-explaining, or guessing yourself, that's not a relationship. That's emotional manipulation through denial, and it's time to walk away from it. They charm everyone except you. There's a unique kind of loneliness that comes from being mistreated by someone who everyone else adores. They're the life of the party, the helpful neighbor, the golden coworker, the one who would never do something like that. Except they did to you, and when you try to speak up, the world tilts sideways. People don't believe you. They call you dramatic, bitter, overreacting, because how could someone so kind, so funny, so loved possibly be cruel? This is one of the most powerful tools evil people use. Public charm to protect private abuse. They're not just manipulative, they're strategic. They know how to curate their image. They study social dynamics the way most of us study language. They learn who to impress, who to flatter, and when to turn up the warmth. And because they're so good in public, It creates a protective shell around them, one that keeps you isolated, invalidated, and unheard. When someone charms everyone but you, that's not just a red flag. That's a calculated defense mechanism, because if no one believes you, they can do whatever they want, and worse, you start to doubt yourself. You think, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I misunderstood them. Maybe I'm just too sensitive, but here's the truth. Your nervous system never lies. If you feel small, unsafe, confused, or anxious around someone, trust that. You don't need the world to validate your pain to make it real. Evil people split their personalities for a reason. They give the world their best self and reserve their darkest parts for the people closest to them, especially those they think they can control. And if you try to expose them, they don't just deny it, they turn it against you. Suddenly you look unstable. You're labeled as toxic, difficult, or jealous. And that's not just painful, it's soul breaking. But here's the deal. You don't need a crowd to confirm the harm you've experienced. Truth doesn't require a majority vote. So if someone treats you terribly in private and like an angel in public, they are not misunderstood. They are not complicated. They are dangerous because they've weaponized perception. And your clarity, your voice, your decision to say, this is not okay, even when no one else sees it, that's not weakness. That's bravery. They intentionally isolate you. Let's talk about isolation, not the kind that happens by circumstance, but the kind that's manufactured, designed, done on purpose. Evil people don't want you connected to strong, loving relationships. They don't want you grounded. They don't want you surrounded by people who truly see and support you, because community makes you powerful, and evil can't thrive where love is strong. So what do? They begin to chip away at your world quietly, subtly, and always under the guise of protecting you. They say things like, your friends don't really understand you. Your family is just trying to control you. I'm the only one who really gets you. And little by little, you begin to pull back. You cancel plans. You stop confiding in others. You isolate yourself not because you want to, but because you've been emotionally conditioned to believe that everyone else is unsafe. And when you're finally alone, that's when they tighten their grip. This is not an accident. It's a pattern. Evil people isolate you to make you easier to manipulate, because when no one's around to reflect the truth back to you, you begin to believe the lies, that you're unworthy, that no one would care if you disappeared, that you're lucky to even have them, and that's exactly what they want. It's emotional abuse disguised as deep connection, but connection that costs you your community is not connection. It's control. So ask yourself, are you shrinking your world to keep one person comfortable? Have you lost touch with the people who loved you before this person came into your life? Are you afraid to talk about your relationship with others because of how they might react? If the answer is yes, pause, breathe, reflect, because that isolation isn't coincidence. It's a tactic. The antidote, reconnection, reaching out, rebuilding, returning to the people and spaces where you are seen, heard, and held without condition. Because here's the thing, evil isolates, but love gathers, and you were never meant to do this life alone, especially not under someone's control. They lack genuine empathy, but they know how to fake it. Empathy is the ability to feel with someone. To sit in their pain, not fix it. To say, I see you, I hear you, you're not alone. And for most of us, empathy is what makes us human. It connects us, it softens us. But evil people, they don't have empathy, at least not the real kind. They can mimic it. They can perform it, but they don't feel it. And that's what makes them so dangerous. You'll notice it when you open up about something painful. You share something raw, something that costs you vulnerability. And they respond with all the right words, but somehow you feel colder after. because their empathy isn't rooted in care, it's rooted in calculation. They ask questions not to understand you, but to collect data. They nod not because they feel your pain, but because they want you to believe they do, and sometimes they're so convincing that you gaslight yourself. They seemed so compassionate. They cried with me. They said everything I needed to hear. But pay attention to what happens after that moment. Real empathy leads to changed behavior. Fake empathy leads to repeated harm. If they keep hurting you the same way after you've poured your heart out, if they only show empathy when people are watching, if their support feels rehearsed instead of real, that's not empathy. That's emotional manipulation in disguise. Evil people are experts in emotional mimicry. They know how to mirror your expressions, match your energy, say things like, "I totally understand. I've been through that too. You can trust me." But underneath the performance is a void. They don't feel what you feel. They don't hurt when you hurt. They don't see your humanity, they see utility. They listen only to gain influence. They comfort only to gain control. They show up for your pain only to own it. And here's what makes it so hard. You want to believe they care. Because it's terrifying to face the truth that someone you've trusted, maybe even loved, has no real emotional connection to your suffering. But acknowledging that truth is where your power begins. Because once you see through the performance, you stop begging for comfort from someone who's only acting, and you start reclaiming the sacredness of your own emotions. Real empathy is never manipulative. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't confuse you. It doesn't disappear the moment your usefulness runs out. So when someone shows you a pattern of performance without presence, words without action, support without sincerity, trust what your body feels, even if your mind doubts it. Because deep down, you always know the difference. They enjoy chaos and drama, and they always pretend they're innocent. Some people create chaos not because they're impulsive or misunderstood or emotionally overwhelmed, but because they enjoy it. They enjoy confusion. They enjoy dysfunction. They enjoy the sound of other people unraveling, especially when they're the one pulling the strings. Evil people have a subtle, almost addictive relationship with emotional chaos. But here's the thing, they never look like the storm. They look like the calm in the storm because they created it. They plant seeds of mistrust, whisper half-truths, play two people against each other. Then they step back with clean hands saying, "Wow, I don't know why everyone's acting so crazy." That's not passive involvement. That's intentional sabotage. You'll notice it in how conflict always seems to follow them, yet they're always the peacemaker. They say they hate drama, but somehow drama lives wherever they go. They light emotional fires, then act shocked when things burn down. It's not clumsiness, it's strategy. Why? Because chaos creates cover. When people are confused, angry, reactive, or on edge, it becomes harder to see clearly, harder to hold boundaries, harder to spot manipulation, and in that fog, evil thrives. The truth is, people who cause emotional chaos aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. Because while the people around them are emotionally hemorrhaging, they're collecting power. They're watching who breaks down first. They're watching who turns on who. They're watching how far you'll bend before you break. And when the damage is done, they either deny everything, "That's not what I said," or worse, they enjoy the fallout. Now you see who your real friends are. Here's what most people don't realize. Drama is a form of control, and evil people use it like a tool to distract you, to exhaust you, to keep you too emotionally disoriented to walk away. So ask yourself, are you constantly cleaning up emotional messes that someone else quietly causes? Do you feel like every conversation ends in confusion or conflict? Do they always seem just outside the explosion but never truly innocent? That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Healthy people bring calm. They de-escalate, they take responsibility for their impact. Evil people bring drama, deny responsibility, and watch the show. And you deserve better than being someone's emotional entertainment. They cross boundaries repeatedly, and without remorse. One of the most telling signs you're dealing with an evil person is this: your boundaries mean nothing to them. You can tell them exactly what hurts, what's off limits, what you will and won't tolerate, and they'll nod, smile, maybe even apologize, then they'll do it again. Because to evil people, boundaries aren't lines to respect, their challenges to conquer. They want to see how far they can push, how much you'll tolerate, how many times they can violate your safety before you stop protecting yourself. And over time, those little violations don't feel so little anymore. They wear you down. You start giving explanations instead of holding limits. You start softening your tone so they won't escalate. You start convincing yourself that maybe you were too harsh, too strict, too much. But here's the truth: you weren't too much, they were too invasive. This is what evil does. It tests your no. It studies your emotional weak spots. It looks for cracks in your self-worth and then uses those cracks to get inside. You'll notice patterns like they keep bringing up topics you've asked them not to. They invade your space emotionally, physically, or mentally and pretend they didn't realize. They guilt trip you for having needs, preferences, or non-negotiables. They make jokes at your expense, then say you can't take a joke. They treat your boundaries like invitations to manipulate, rather than lines they're meant to honor. And here's the dangerous part: every time they cross a boundary and don't face consequences, they become more powerful. Because they learn something about you, that you care more about peace than protection, that you'll keep forgiving, that you're too kind to walk away. But kindness without boundaries is self-abandonment. And evil people count on that. So if you find yourself repeating the same boundary conversations over and over, if you feel like your needs are always negotiable, but theirs are law, if you're starting to shrink parts of yourself just to keep the peace, that's not respect. That's relentless emotional trespassing. Healthy people respect the first no. Evil people ignore the 10th one, and your job is not to convince someone to honor your limits. Your job is to walk away when they won't. Because love without respect isn't love, and anyone who continually violates your boundaries is not confused, they're entitled to your pain. They drain your soul, not just your energy. We've all had relationships that leave us tired. People who talk too much, demand too much, or just take more than they give. That's normal, that's life. But this is different. This isn't someone draining your time. This is someone draining your spirit. When you're dealing with an evil person, the exhaustion runs deeper than physical or mental fatigue. It becomes emotional erosion. You don't just feel tired. You feel empty, disoriented, disconnected from the version of yourself that used to be vibrant, alive, and full of light. You stop laughing like you used to. You stop trusting your voice. You lose the sense of safety within your own body. That's not overthinking. That's soul where the slow, daily unraveling of your self-worth. And it happens gradually, so gradually you don't even realize it's happening. At first, you explain it away. I'm just stressed. Maybe I'm not showing up enough. It's probably me. But here's what you need to hear. It's not you. It's them. Evil people have a way of getting inside your mind, your emotions, your nervous system, and rewiring your sense of normal. They chip away at your identity with small, repetitive acts of criticism, confusion, betrayal, and shame. They create a version of reality where you question yourself constantly: what you felt, what you said, what you believe, and the more you question yourself, the more power they gain. The result: you begin to dim. Not all at once, but quietly, piece by piece. You stop sharing your ideas. You stop dreaming out loud. You stop trusting your intuition. And before long, you've forgotten who you were before they entered your life. That's not exhaustion. That's soul trauma. And the deepest tragedy is it often takes years to recognize what was stolen. So here's your reminder, the one evil never wants you to hear. If someone makes you feel smaller, flatter, colder, or lonelier consistently, that is not love, partnership, friendship, or family. That is soul erosion, and it is a red flag in its most dangerous form. You deserve relationships that light you up, not ones that wear you down. People who restore your sense of self, not erase it. People who say, come home to yourself, and not make you feel like you're never enough. Because when someone is draining your soul, the most radical act of self-love is to walk away and reclaim it. Naming evil is an act of self-respect. Here's what I know for sure. Most of us are taught from a young age to be kind, to forgive, to see the good in people, and those are beautiful values. But if we're not careful, they can also become weapons used against us. Because evil doesn't always show up looking evil. Sometimes it looks like charm, like love, like friendship, like family, and that's what makes it so devastating. But listen closely, this isn't a speech about blame. This is a call to come back to yourself, to trust what your body knows, to stop justifying what keeps breaking you, to stop calling it love when it feels like fear, to stop calling it forgiveness when it's really self-abandonment. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not broken for needing space, distance, or complete disconnection from someone who hurts you, even if that person is charismatic, popular, or important. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to walk away quietly. You're allowed to say, this is evil, and I won't let it touch me anymore. Because calling it what it is, that's not hate. That's self-respect. That's truth telling. That's healing, and no matter what they took from you, you still have the power to choose yourself, to rebuild your voice, to return to the light inside you, the one they tried so hard to put out. You don't need anyone's permission, just your own.